Good evening, everyone. It's March 30th, and you're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. I'm your host, Joe Abadi. On Monday, news had broke from around the world that 1974 250cc world champion Jaroslav Falta had passed away at his home in Czechoslovakia. We thought about that a little bit this week, and we wanted to do a little tribute to Mr. Falta, being he was loved around the world, especially here in America. So tonight's show, we will be showing you an interview that I did with Jaroslav Falta. I guess it was just about a year ago. We will return next week with our regular format for the show, so if you sent in any bikes or questions this week, they will be on next week's program. But right now, let's get over to the interview and you'll hear a little bit more about the late Jaroslav Falta. I have a very, very special guest with me, 1974 world champion, in my opinion, and we're going to talk more about that in just a moment, Jaroslav Falta. And Ludmila Falta is also with us this morning. Also, along with Mr. Falta, his daughter, Martina, is here to translate for us. Good morning, Ludmila and Jaroslav. Welcome.
Welcome. Good morning.
Thank you for taking the time to speak to me today. And I'm so grateful to Martina for doing the translation because I don't speak Czecho. So we're all here, and it's all going to be great, I'm sure, with the translation. And I'm just so honored to have Jaroslav as my guest. First, let me begin by saying that you will forever be the 250 world champion in the world's opinion, really. You won a lot of hearts that day, regardless of what some corruptible jury may have determined.
Hey, Joe, this is Martina. Thanks for having us all. Thanks for the introduction.
Takže děkuju za pozvání.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your kind words, Joe.
Jaroslav, tell me something. How old were you when you and your brother Jerry first became interested in motorcycles?
Tak co bylo cítit benzínem? Mě zajímalo už jako malého kluka.
So I'm going to blame it all on my brother Jiří. Jiří is 3 years older than me, so we were always down in my father's garage messing with something. And pretty much anything that smelled with gasoline, I was always interested in tinkering around. My father used to have old Pioneer. It's a checkmate little bike. So anytime he was not at home, we would take it out for a spin in the nearby woods and try to, bang it up back together when we came back, get all the dust and dirt and moth and leaves and everything out of it, making it look back to normal. And so yeah, pretty much my brother, because he is the one who got his bike first. He got little 50cc, and he tried few local competitions on it, and soon he outgrew that bike. So I inherited it 50 and made few little modification on it so I can ride it in the woods. And so my brother, when he moved to 250, I was riding on that little one. But honestly, right somewhere around the age of 10, I knew that bikes will be in my life.
What kind of motorcycle was that, Jaroslav?
Ta 50 Java.
The 50 was Java.
Oh, okay.
The 50 was all Java, and then, of course, we were influenced by our uncle, Mr. Jaroslav Čermák, who was a huge influence on us. He was always nearby, always helping hand, showing us what to do, how to do it, and he rode himself pretty good. And me and my brother would follow him everywhere, accompany him on racetracks, and of course in his garage when he was tinkering with the bike. And
so it was your uncle Čermák who raced motocross in Czechia, and that's where you first saw a motocross race when Čermák was racing?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yes. Uncle Čermák was the one that I saw him on the first big track.
Tell me about that day where you saw Čermák race for the first time. Was it motocross, and what was that event like for you to see that?
Jako na šárce. A tam byl mezinárodní závod.
Let's back up a little bit. You know, I grew up in the countryside, outside of Prague, and traveling back there was not as easy as it is now. So, you know, let's say 100-kilometer trip was a day trip, and going in the big city, it was huge. So we could be talking about two different stadiums. One is Sharka and one is Strahov. Strahov is a stadium that in the 60s was one of the first one hosted stadium cross event. But that was only for World Championships. And my uncle did not race World Championship. He was on Sharka, which is the stadium number 2, which is more nature track. And I mean, both of these stadiums were huge events for a grown-up, and times 10 for a little kid from a countryside, seeing all that in there. I honestly don't remember much as of who won, who was there. I know there was Valek, one of the Czech riders, but I was too overwhelmed with just the whole atmosphere and everything buzzing around, so many people, and I knew that was it. I was around 10 years old.
So how long after that, seeing that race that day, did you race your first event?
Můj první závod, kdy jsem měl řidičák na pionýra, na 50.
It was a little while later, because they were really not, motocross was not really around that much, and we still did not have our driver's license. We were kids. But my very first race, I think I was around 15 years old. That was on the 50. And it was more like half track, half field motocross, kind of like Elsinore. You kind of take off, go in the woods, come back, and then you're on the track for a little bit. And so that was that. I was third overall that day.
Third overall that day. Martina, you tell me that your dad, he used to have to race through the woods to get to a practice track, and he had to avoid being caught by the police. Would there be a penalty if he were caught by the police doing that?
To si řekni, že to bylo tak ne.
Na trať jsme museli dojíždět, ale
yes, that's true. Well, the track actually was not far from the house, but we did not have license. So we could not, and the bikes were not allowed to go on the street. So we had to take off and take it through the woods. And plus, we had nobody to take us to the track, load up and drive us there. So we had to. Well, the cops, they had no chance in the woods. We were just, we took off. But then eventually, when they do find us, it's kind of like, having a good cop, bad cop, you never know who you get. But we were really lucky because even though they did not, we smoked them in the woods, but when they found us on the track, they let us be. They watched and they let us be. And what could happen, I don't know. We were kids. Probably they would call our parents, and that would be the biggest punishment ever. Because we would get in trouble with our parents for, not obeying the law. But other than that, I don't think they would do much.
Thank you, Alan Brown at Northwest Mako CZ. Be sure to contact Alan Brown at www.northwestmakocz.com. Nothing will get your parts cleaner than vapor blasting. Who do you want to see for that? You want to see Mark Farriester at Sunrise Vapor Blasting in Modesto. You had a little racing career there when you were 15 and 16 years old. At the age of 18, the government requires all men to enlist in the Army to serve their country. how was it determined that you were a great motorcycle rider and that when they take you into the Army, they're going to continue letting you do that? And also, I understand that your older brother was sick and that they took you, Yaroslav, at 17 instead of 18. Tell me about how that works.
U nás v té době byla dvouletá vojenská povinná služba.
The military service was mandatory, 2 years, and it wasn't 18. It was at the age of 19.
Okay.
It is true that Jiří, as the older one, was supposed to go before me. But when the time came and the recruits, were snooping around, Jiří got sick and did not pass the physical, and was not allowed to join the Army. So while the recruits were looking around, and I have already won few races up north where I grew up and some local competitions, they saw a talent and they talked to my parents. They talked to the coaches in Dukla. And they talked to my uncle and said, well, if one Falta can go, how about this other one? Would it be possible to get him in a little bit early? So I don't know the exact details of it, but I think somebody said that somebody had to buy me a year on my birth certificate to make me older and, to fit the all the blanks and to fit the protocol for me to be admitted to the Army. And what
you mentioned Dukla.
Yes.
Dukla is an organization within the Army that trains athletes. Is that how that works?
Yes.
Yes.
He was gonna get to it. Yes. So
Okay.
what is Dukla? It's kind of complicated question and hard to explain, but I will try to my best ability and knowledge.
Okay.
I did some Google research earlier. And actually, the name Dukla came from a battle in World War II. I don't know if Dad you ever knew it or not. But anyway, that's not it. So in a nutshell, it is an organization inside the Army that gathers all the best, all the top athletes in the country. Because when you join, you are in your prime. You're a man 18, 19, 20 years old, and you have 2 years signed to be in the Army no matter what. So our Dukla, pretty much every town that had a military base had a Dukla team. Dukla team did not have to be motocross. They were all athletes. They were gymnasts, field and track, boxers. There was a part for motorcycles. There were swimmers. Name it, they had it. So if you were good enough to meet the Dukla standards, you were, and you were a soldier, you were put in a Dukla team. They were 6 moto-based Duklas in the country, 2 in the Slovakia and 4 in the Czech Republic. The one in Prague, the Dukla Praha, was the best of the best. So after the first year in the Army, the first initial month when you go through the military training, through some of the, nonsense, left and right and do all that, you don't get to see the bikes. And then they were moved to Prague, and after the oath, they were waiting their assignments. And my father was placed into Dukla Praha, which was the cherry on the cake as far as the motocross went.
Yaroslav, were there other racers that we would be familiar with from motocross that were on the Dukla team with you at that time?
U nás.
No, tak když jsem nastoupil, tak se mnou tam byl teda přede mnou tam byl.
So yes, absolutely, you will recognize some of these names. So when I joined, and name the age didn't match because I was there a year early. So even though, let's say, Antonín Baborovský, he is older than me, but he came year later. So he was, I not exactly sure what are the military terms, but he was my greenie. He was, he was the gringo. He was the guy under me. But yes, so when I came in, Antonín Hrach, Miroslav Lisi was there the first year. Then you'll recognize Jiří Stodulka, of course Miroslav Halm,
Toman, Toman.
Otakar Toman, and then a year later, Mr. Tony Baborovský, Jiří Churavý, Zdeněk Velký, and all these guys eventually shaped up to be on the top of the world in the 70s at one point.
So let me ask you this now, Yaroslav, when you're in the Army, you're training to be a motocrosser, but do they also train you to defend your country? Did you have to learn how to handle weapons? And what was your job as a military man, not just a motocross rider?
Tak hlavně, když jsi nastoupil, tak to byl ten vlastně povinný přijímač.
The military service, once you make it to Dukla, is a little different. Yes, we had to go through the initial training where we learn how to handle guns and go left and go right, and we had to go through classes where pretty much brainwashing about the communism regime and how how to be in tune and on the same page with the big brothers, and what to follow and which army is your home and what to believe into. But honestly, as I would be pretty worthless to my country as a soldier. I did I would not do really well with guns. So what we did in Dukla was, after the first basic training, we focused on bikes, and we had it really easy. We trained, we learned how to work with the bikes, on the bikes. We went, swimming, physical training, and everything was about the sport that you were assigned to and representing your country. We had very little to do with the army nonsense.
So how long, because at that point you're a factory CZ rider, but you're in the Army, or am I wrong?
Wrong. No, I actually never was a CZ factory rider. The Dukla was sponsored and was getting all their bikes from the CZ plant in Strakonice, but they were their regular production bikes throughout the season. The GP specials were only sent to us for a GP race. And after the race, the bikes were taken away and went back to Strakonice to the plant.
Classic and vintage dirt bikes are more than a hobby. It's not just about the ride. It's about the work that goes in. The work that keeps you connected to the ride. It's about bringing the bike back to life and doing it with your own hands. It's about the adrenaline and adventure. And when it comes to putting all the pieces together, only Vinco knows the bikes and parts the way you do. Vinco, keep the ride going.
Vinco does have a special going on this week. They have a gasket set for the 1976, 1977 RM370 and the 1978 RM400. That is just $42.95 from Vinco. when you're practicing all week on the Dukla team, when you're in the service, you're just riding regular production bikes.
Trénovali jsme na servejk motorkách.
Yeah, during the week we were on regular bikes. There were not much special to it. We could do some tweaking, or our mechanics in Dukla would work on them and make them a little better, but they were for the Czech championship and the races in Czech. Eventually I would get my GP bike from the plant, and the word was you are only testing on it during the week, so I was able to ride the Czech championship on a better bike, but it was never in my possession. Every time I was done with the race, the bike was taken away and went back to Strakonice. So the GP bikes were the ones that they were wanted, and what the mechanics and engineers in Strakonice did, they would test maybe better shocks, give better engine in there, give it a more power, but we had no say to what needed to be done to make things better.
In the 2 years when you were in the service, you would go out to race. How many different countries did you go to in those 2 years? What GPs did you race?
No tak hlavně domácí závody, tak těch bylo.
So in those 2 years, the only time we would go out, abroad, was for GPs. So there were not many, but local, or the Czech competition in our country, we did about 30 races a year.
Wow.
Quite a bit, but to be able to go abroad, you had to race in the GPs, and those were limited.
Okay, so when your time in the service is over, do you remain on the Dukla team?
No tak, jako ta Dukla byla nejlepší, tak se tam
yes, after the 2 years, you can stay or you can leave. Leaving would not be a smart choice because Dukla was the best out there. So I signed paperwork, and I remained a soldier for another 15 years. Let's say I was in the Army Reserve, to be, technical about it. And so yeah, I was a soldier for another 15 years or 15 years. So however else I stayed in Dukla, I believe I left Dukla in 1984. So it was about 15 years.
15 years. So you remain on the Dukla team. You remain in the reserve for the Army. Is there a salary? Who pays you? How do you support yourself? Where do you live?
The paycheck comes from the Army. You get your uniform, and you put it on special events, and but it pretty much stays in the closet most time, and you do your thing. You take care of a bike and you ride. It really was the best scenario, the best situation there could have been, because I did not have to do much of that Army stuff, and it was all about motorcycles. Our coaches were, there was a legendary duo, Mr. Hrebeček and Helikar, who they have put together plans and books and techniques how to train. What they both were, retired racers, and they knew what to do, how to take care of an athlete, and they really, groomed us to be professionals. And that's what we did. And once you get into the world, into the GP circles, then that was our life, that was our livelihood, and that was our job.
Okay. Martina, the next question is a little long. So I just want to warn you about that a little bit. It may take you a little while to get Yaroslav to understand the question, but not really, because you were the one who brought to my attention that after he had served his country, you're on the Dukla team, you're racing for CZ, you're able to go to other countries and race GPs now. However, you can't take your family with you. But being part of the Dukla team, you were able to do a few things to get Ludmilla and Martina into other countries so they could travel with you. Have him tell us more about, because you as his family were not allowed to leave Checo. He's allowed to leave with Dukla. But how did he get you and your brother and your mom, how did he get you to see some of the other countries that he went to in Europe?
Jako šel jsem do...
So it is very complicated, and for anyone who never lived in socialism in the communist country, it is really hard to explain. It's really hard to understand. We get a lot shaking heads and like, how is that possible? Where it is. So traveling to the West was not allowed. Even under the Dukla umbrella, we still had to have special visa, special approvals to go, and then upon the return, we would have to fill forms. Who did we talk to? Why did we talk to them? How long and where and whatnot. So one of the things, that really took out from us was traveling abroad to GPs. And instead of just cutting through Germany to France from one GP to another, or Belgium, we would have to trek back thousands and thousands of kilometers to get back home, renew visa to a different country, get an approval, and go there. So we lost a lot of time on the road just to get paperwork from A to B. But I think you were hinting around the trip to France where they smuggled me and my mom covered with sleeping bags.
I wouldn't miss a story like that.
And
that's the story I want to hear.
So that was Parents of the Year. That was after Dad left Dukla. After 84, he went private with Stodulka and Novacek and raced on his own. They raced for a German sponsor, Barum Mefo, and they were on their own, so they were not risking the Dukla spot anymore. However, they were, risking their family. So what happened was we still had to get visas and documentation filled in for Falta, Novacek, and Stodulka to go race. But my mom and I did not get visa all the way to France. We only went to Western Germany. Well, these two, Falta and Jiří Stodulka, Falta was traveling with Mom and me. I was 4 years old. My mom was pregnant with my brother. If I was 4, my mom had to be pregnant. And Stodulka was traveling with his wife and 2 kids.
2 kids.
Two children. Well, when they made it across Germany, close to France, they saw that the border patrol is not really doing their job, or it was the middle of the night or whatnot. So they took a chance and say, let's play hide and seek. And they would cover, pregnant mom in sleeping bags. I remember being in tires, in a stack of tires, playing hide and seek with the blanket over me. I remember the blanket stank with gasoline, the oily, misty smell of it. And so we were 2 cars. This is what we did with ours. And Stodulka smuggled his wife and his 2 children to France, and we end up having a wonderful vacation in southern France for 2 weeks. And then they lost me there twice.
They lost you in France?
Yes. So not only we all being there illegally, but they were too busy shopping, and they let me go. I was riding the escalators,
Mm-hmm.
and what I remember is there was a poster down on one floor, and I remember that poster that this is the floor that I need to get off, and my parents are looking here at some dishes or whatever they were looking at. And so I was riding the escalators up and down, killing time. Well, somebody changed the poster or turned the poster around. So I lost my exit. I did not know where I was.
How long were you lost for?
Maybe 1 hour.
Probably 1 hour, and then I got lost, and I got found by the mall security guy.
Hmm.
And yeah, I was a little kid, and luckily he was more interested in getting an autograph than seeing any kind of paperwork, and he returned me to my parents, and that was that. The second time they lost me was somewhere in the street in Saint Tropez, where I was apparently watching some street artist, and my mom thought that I'm with my dad, and my dad thought that I'm with my mom, so they both kept on going, and when they look at each other, they're like, "Where's the kid?" and I was still there, so that's the trip to France where we had to do what we had to do. Never a dull moment with these two. Yeah. All right, Joe, if I could, just to add on a little bit about the being private and going out with
Yeah.
Novacek and Stodulka. Again, it's one of those things that's hard to understand and hard to wrap your head around it. Not only you have to have an employer here, like in the country that you are leaving, uh, you have to pay money to get a stamp in your passport. No matter if you're making money abroad or not. And then if you do make money, whatever you bring back is taxed. So not really yours. So the only pay that they were getting then as a private rider was their starting money and the money that they would make abroad. Plus, they had to fee that and tax it when they came home and pay the government for what they did.
When you didn't have visas and you were in France or in Saint Tropez, what happens if you're caught by the authorities and you're there with no visa? Is there a penalty for that? What happens?
No tak určitě by nás zatkli.
On the French side, if we would have been caught, we would definitely be taken to the embassy, and we would be deported.
Mm-hmm.
And on the Czech side, on the other side, our passports would be taken away. There definitely, there is a possibility of jail time. We would not be ever able to travel ever again, since our passports would be detained. Is that the word?
Yeah.
And so yeah, either me or the whole family. You don't know how far the hand would reach,
Preston Petty still has a special going on this week. Front and rear MX fenders and 3 number plates, just $129.95. Don't forget, Preston Petty is still looking for retail dealers. Get a hold of Paul Standard at Preston Petty Products. We're going to move on to when Yaroslav first came to, I don't know if it's when he first came to America, but a story I wanted to hear about was when he won the Super Bowl of motocross in 1974. And it was the first time he had sprayed champagne, because in Checo, you don't waste any alcohol.
No, we drink it.
I understand it was maybe Jim Pomeroy who taught him how to shake the bottle and squirt the champagne. So I'd like to know more about that and some other Jim Pomeroy stories that he might have, whatever comes to his memory. Tell me some stories about him and Jim Pomeroy, because I know they traveled in GPs in the 250 class quite a bit.
No tak.
John, ne Roy.
Ale Takže Martino, poprvé v Americe
First
to bylo
time,
vlastně, tam jsem byl
me being in the
73.
US was 1973. For the Interama, we went 5 or 6 races. We also went to Canada for a few, and that was me and Baborovsky. The second time was the 74. That was the Super Bowl. I had to leave home week early. And the reason why we were here that summer, there was a break in between the GP races in Europe. So we had time to go elsewhere and keep on riding. So we went here and we raced in those 2 months, I believe, altogether like 12 races, all through the States. Obviously, the Super Bowl of Motocross in the Los Angeles Coliseum was the cherry on the cake. Wonderful, wonderful experience. And if you wanna hear about the champagne, where they gave me a bottle, so I sprayed it. It was not a custom to give champagne in Europe. Definitely not in Czech. It had something to do with waste, or that's how the people on the west side of the wall party. That was the Wild West, not the East to do. And I'm just looking here really quick. The bikes for the 74 Super Bowl motocross, they flew with us. We actually took them apart. Something was in the carry-on and something came in the box. We put it back together there. And after the summer, they flew back home. I had to leave about a week early to catch up with the World Championship on the other side of the pond. But the bikes flew with us in and out. And with Roy, I keep calling him Roy, I'm sorry.
Jim Pomeroy?
Jim Pomeroy. I remember him, there's a language barrier, but I remember him as a showman, always smiling, always up to something no good, always running around, always trying to get somebody in trouble, but like in a good trouble, always have fun. I remember him in Sweden, I believe. He bought himself jeans, but it was hot and he didn't have a bathing suit, so he cut them off and made them into shorts, into swim trunks. Well, that was new and very different, because jeans were, they were prohibited. You could not just go and buy a pair of jeans, and then seeing somebody buying a pair of jeans and cutting them up and making them into shorts, that was fun. Also him getting everybody round up after Vohlen, after the GP race in 1974. Jim was one of the first ones who came to the pits, of course, with, champagne up in the air and just making it rain. And he ran through the pits, he yelled at everybody, come on, let's go party, let's go celebrate. And he was the one who brought the crowds around our pit.
Yeah. In 1974, you were clearly the winner that day at Switzerland, and we had all thought you won the World Championship. We read about what had happened on that track for many years. Now on the internet, you can read about it, but we didn't really find out everything about what happened off the track. And I have some questions about that. Mm-hmm. Were you or anyone from the Dulka team, were you able to discuss what happened at the FIM meeting?
Tak hlavně jsme o tom nesměli, vrátili jsme se domů. No,
we were not allowed to talk about what had happened. I did not know who was in the jury. I honestly, there was such a chaos right after the race where we were celebrating me as a world champion for half an hour. Somewhere you can read for like 2 hours, but they were actually this is way complicated than it ever leaked out. And honestly, right now I'm in the middle of talking to a gentleman who is talking to people who were in charge in Volland in the 74 and the FIM and the FIM and the Federation. I'm reading and translating some minutes of the meetings. I see who voted for who and who voted for what. But so, kind of in a nutshell, we're after the race, the first jury decided to give me the minute penalty for jumping the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they voted, they should have restarted the race for two different reasons. Forget what had happened on the track and the way how the Russians rode and who and how many races they had, just none of that. But number one, if they thought that I jumped the start and that there was something with the gate, they should have restarted. I hit it. I didn't jump it. I hit it with many others. There are pictures. Why I had the front wheel in front of everybody else? Well, maybe I was the fastest. But I did not jump the gate. That's number one. Going into the turn, I've seen a guy, and there was a huge pileup right after me, more than 10 riders on the ground. And in the rules, it also says if there's more than half of the field on the ground, you should restart the moto. That happened either. So when I was making the turn and I glimpsed over and I saw the guy with the rope trying to stop the race, but that never happened. And they let the race go and finish because they already knew they have the 60-second penalty on me. So after that, everything erupted. Jury went and voted. And what I found out 15 years later is it wasn't all that clear and black and white. So there were a juror from Austria.
Yes.
Well, he voted for KTM. They're for the Russians.
Yeah.
The Czech coach, Helikar, and Russian coach, Sokolov, those two were not allowed to vote. Then the next one was German juror. He voted for me. And then the last one was the director of the race. And now it's things trying to make sense a little bit more. Director of the race, who also coincidentally was the only KTM importer for Switzerland. So therefore he voted for KTM. And that the score from that day is, went to Russia. The second move was to send a counter protest into the Federation, and that was supposed to be decided in a meeting in San Marino in the fall of that same year.
Mm-hmm.
So we were packing up and going to France for the nations. So we had no, and there were no cell phones, internet, none of that back then in 74. So we just hop in our van and went and try to focus on France, on the destinations, while the Czech delegates were trying to send letters into San Marino. And when the Czechs went there in the fall, I had no idea who went, who those people were. They went, apparently they were offered not to join the meeting, that the jury had enough votes in my favor. So even though if they do not show up, the first voting of the jury in Volland would be erased. I don't know the word. And I would be giving the championship back. Well, they went and they voted with the Russian brothers. Apparently they got my silver medal in the pocket. They went home and handed it to me somewhere on the race the next year. I found out what happened at these meetings a year later. That's it.
Now, there was a social event for Dukla because a lot of people wanted to know what the results were, why, how the voting went. But they were when there was this social event for people to ask questions to Dukla and to have the questions answered, the team was told not to answer any questions.
To bylo veřejnosti. Někde prostě tě pozvali.
Yes. So back to the meetings where, so let's say the Dukla team would go somewhere and had a meeting with the public, with the fans. And of course, questions were asked. What happened? What did you do? And why is it the way it is? But the Dukla guys or Dad and the racers were told they cannot talk about what had happened. And
Who tells them, Martina?
Some words were said.
Who tells them that they can't talk about it? Who tells them that? The government?
Yes. Yeah. The governments and the communists out in the army. And so they were actually say, if you want to race, you better shut up. You make something up. If you want to stay here and race and represent, you make something up. Don't talk about what had happened. And so, Dad was saying that was such a hard ordeal after not only being done wrong, but then trying to come up with some cackadoodle excuse of what had happened and being right. Standing there in front of those people and not having answers.
In 1976, you were winning the season. You were doing very well in the Grand Prix. Then rumors were heard that the communists had taken you out of racing. There was rumors about drug testing. There was rumors about you being sick. And the Eastern Bloc doesn't strike me as a place where they send you to rehabilitation, or if there's a drug problem, a doping problem, so to speak. Were you actually sick during those years, Yaroslav, or where were you? Because it seems that you were there racing, you were winning a world championship, and then you were gone, and there were all sorts of rumors floating around. Were you in a hospital? Where did you go? Where were you?
No tak ta sezóna byla rozjetá ten 70.
It was actually the season after 74, so we're talking about 1975. None of these rumors and stories that I was doping or I was put away or I was in jail. None of that was true. I was ill. I was really good. I really did not tell anyone about what had happened. So I was not in jail. I wanted to focus on myself 100,000%. I wanted to prove that I have it, that I can do it again. I talked to the coach and he said, let's do it. You can. I was in the best shape. I was ready to do it one more time. And I had won both motos in the Austrian GP with some difficulties. Then out of nowhere, I just became really tired. On the track, off the track, my physical was just off. And then in the GP Czechoslovakia later in Holice, I had to quit the first moto because of a terrible pain. But I won the second one. And then in Poland GP, I had a really bad nosebleed and bruises all over my legs and the body. And so on the way back, I went and checked in the army hospital, and they never let me out. They didn't let me out for a couple months. My coach Helikar, he brought me his old PJs. He called my parents and said, hey, he won't be coming home for a little while. They did tons and tons of blood work. They put me on isolation for a month. And I was eating a lot of pills. Nobody really knew what was wrong. I knew something is bad because there was constantly somebody checking on me, and eventually I learned it was life-threatening disease, or what I could have bled to death in my sleep. The final diagnosis was a spleen failure, and some other problems with blood clogging and the density of my blood. I stayed in the hospital for a couple of months and was able to came out for the winter practice, but the whole 75 season was gone.
Was your mom, or you able to go see him in the hospital?
Yeah.
Yes, I was there.
Yes, she was allowed to come see him.
Did he race again in 77?
6.
76 was his last professional year.
76 až.
No. After then, so 70, 74, or 70, 74, 75 was in the hospital. He came back for the 76 season.
Yeah.
And when, was good again, in a good shape, and started the 76 GP season on the 76 CZ, which was not as good anymore.
Don't forget Tom McAllister and Full Circle Racing. If you need wheels and spokes, on-road, off-road, adventure bikes, whatever it may be sure to see Tom McAllister at Full Circle Racing. Bill's Pipes, the best place to get a hold of them is on Facebook. They've got all their contact information there, so get a hold of Bill's Pipes if you're looking for a silencer or a pipe for your off-road bike. Racer X Magazine, it's available on your newsstand now and also available online. Be sure to check out our ad in the back of every issue. By that time, 76, 77, even though the smaller manufacturers like Bultaco or Montesa, the factories were smaller, but they were still keeping up with technology and doing fairly well in the GPs. CZ, not so much. What was the problem with technology with CZ? Obviously, they built a wonderful motorcycle, very dependable, one of the most reliable bikes in the world. But what happened there in Checo at that time where they didn't make advances with suspension and certain things the same way Bultaco or Osa or Montesa did? They were small factories too, but yet they were hanging on, but they still made a bike. CZ, not so much. Why is that?
Nevím, co se tam stalo v Číze.
I don't think this is a question directly for me, or if I could answer it the right way. I really don't know what had happened in the factory. I don't know. I was a writer. I don't know enough who stopped the production or why. Well, the production never really stopped. The CZ had a huge market in the East. The Russians were still taking them, and so the production were out there. Why they were not innovating, why they were not trying to keep up with the rest of the world, I cannot answer you that question.
Let's go back to we were talking about something a little bit earlier where Yaroslav and Stadulka, Novacek put a little team together, and they were going back and forth to from Checo to France to Germany. Tell me about how that team was developed. What kind of bikes were they riding then? And who was on that team? Were they still racing personally? What happened?
No tak přesto to jsme jezdili ty první přes to Mefolí.
So after leaving Dukla and making that what we call the team, the Falta, Novacek, and Stodulka team.
Yes.
So they were sponsored by a German gentleman, Liebel, who was selling Barum tires, and they would race for him. And obviously, he was a sponsor, so with his name, with the stickers and everything for that. He bought them bikes. So my dad was 1 year. He was on the KTM 500. He raced that 1 year, and then later he moved to Kawasaki 250, and Stodulka was on 500 Kawasaki, and later on Yamaha. At the contract was for 3 years, so at the end of the contract, they would bought those bikes and brought them home.
Were those his last year racing professionally?
No a jeli jsme ven.
Yes. So if you want to have the years, 84 is leaving Dukla, and last race for Dukla was 84, the GP in Belgium, where he did not finish because he hurt his ankle, I believe. And then after 84, he went private for 3 years with Barum Mefo in Germany. He hung up the helmet in 1987 for good, overnight, cold turkey.
Cold turkey. Yaroslav, Martina tells me that you love birds. You love to feed wild birds, and that you could train wild birds to come to you. When did that all start to happen?
No tak to, když už jsem potom skončil kariéru, zůstal jsem doma.
I do like all animals. Not true. I'm going to edit this answer a little bit.
That's fine.
So I like all animals. Growing up, we always had cats and dogs and bunnies and chickens and whatnot. Birds. So let's say I did my whole life was racing, riding. I didn't do much of anything else. And when I quit, he's saying it as a joke. When I quit, I had nothing to do. So when I like woods, I like hiking. So when he was out there by the river, ducks would start following him. So like, well, let's see if I can train this thing. And next thing he knows, there's about 90 ducks following him every time he would go on his hikes, or he would follow. So he started feeding it. And there's a flock of ducks just going behind this guy. So he eventually was able to touch their beaks and make it stop moving and shut it, touch them. And so it started with wild birds. He really does. Everywhere he goes, there is a bird that's trying to tame it and feed it and do something with it. We had many birds growing up in the house that he tried to teach them how to talk, how to come to him, train them with mild success. This last one he has right now, they're working on talking, but it's a young one, and it's a progress. It's slow, but hopefully one day he will start talk. As far as animals goes, he said he loves them all. He doesn't. He hates snakes. He is terrified. He is terrified of snakes, lizards, and anything that crawls on the ground. Story from 2001 in Sears Point, California. He was lined up next to Brad Lucky on the gate, and before that we were messing around talking in the pits, and I mentioned that Dad's fear of snake. Well, Bad Brad somehow somewhere found a skin snake, snake's skin, I'm sorry, and as they were standing there on the gate, and he came with that thing and just threw it on my dad, thinking that he's going to throw him off his game. And so Brad Lucky tried to cheat and put my father's fear in front of his face, but it didn't work out. Dad won.
If your father is interested in knowing, Martina, my house is about 100 kilometers from Sears Point. That's where I'm speaking to you from now.
Oh, is that right? Is that
Nice.
There's no snakes by my house, though.
To můžeme navštívit.
He said that's okay, so I can come visit.
Yeah, anytime. Today, these days, you live in the Czech countryside near your old friends Velky and Boborovsky. How often do you see them, and what are some of the things you talk about?
Tak Tonda ten bydlí 4 kilometry tady.
live in the countryside, not far from Prague. It's beautiful out here. I was introduced to this country by one of my bestest friends, Antonín Baborovský, who lives just over the hill, about 4 kilometers away, not far at all. Zdenek Velký lives on the other side, over another hill, so also not far at all. Yes, we are still in touch, mainly with Baborovský, but everybody else, like Velký, Stodulka, we still see each other at the races. We go, try to watch the big ones like the GPs or the Czech Nationals and hang out there. With Antonín Baborovský, we are in touch. We phone, text on a regular basis.
Hi, I'm Jeff with Motion Pro, introducing you to the Masterlink Press Tool. Now, the Masterlink Press Tool is an innovative addition to our wide variety of chain tools here at Motion Pro, and what makes this tool so unique is that it both presses on and presses off Masterlink side plates. It's designed to be used with all 50 series clip-style links and performs the job very easily. The Masterlink Press Tool is constructed with a billet aluminum body and hardened steel pins for long-lasting durability. It's affordably priced at $28.99 and is available from your favorite dealers nationwide.
He was here in America for the CZ race a few years ago. Your dad was. I wasn't available. I had to be in New York when that race was in California. Will he be coming back to California or to America again anytime soon?
No tak
Závodit
určitě ne, to nemůžu, to mám ty 4 obraty.
Probably, definitely not riding or racing. I have, health issues and my back's been broken a few times. I'm missing a few vertebrae, and so I will not ride, that's for sure. Stodulka is the one who's been riding the longest out of all of us. I think he went and raced last year, so he's still very active, but I am not. He said if I fly anywhere, I might go see you, Martina, but I probably wait till you come over here. Dad does not like flights. He's not a fan of airplanes or boats, and you can really drive over here. So yeah, it's complicated with him and his travels.
I understand. Well, Martina, we're coming to a close, and I would like you to tell Yaroslav that this video will be available for people to watch probably for years and years to come. Is there anything he would like to say? Anything that is on his mind, either about America, Czechoslovakia, whatever it might be? I would like to give him a few minutes to either recap his racing career or some things that he would like the world to know about himself, about his family.
Good luck. Okay, so why I said while he's thinking, Joe, good luck. That's why I said good luck, because I don't know if you know or anyway, people who know my father knows he is a man of very few words.
Yes.
So when you and I started talking first I agreed, and then I went into like mild panic attack, saying, oh my gosh, he doesn't talk. He's probably the worst person to have an interview with. What we gonna do? But he sat down and he did his homework. He got his years straight. I think that was the biggest issue, because he don't remember what year what was and wasn't. So let's see what he has to say.
Okay. And I thought he did. I remember you telling me that he was a man of few words, but this morning he was a symphony this morning. He had plenty of things to say, and he moved right along very nicely.
So,
Let's hear what Jaroslav has to say now in his closing of our interview this morning.
děkujeme za pozvání.
No hele Martin, chtěl bych poděkovat.
First off, I would like to thank to everyone who suffered through all the way to the end through this interview and made it and listened to us till the end. I would like to thank to everyone who still remember us, the old guys from Czech. I really admire the enthusiasm and the people who still believe and treasure the CZ brand. I want to thank to Peter de la Torre, who sponsored me and Zdenek Velký and allow us or made it possible for us to come and see the CZ World Championship in Marysville. I was amazed how many CZs still are alive in really good shape, how many people are still riding them hard. Being there among all these, big names, Marty Tribes, Brad Lucky, the De Sotos were there, people from France, people from New Zealand. It was a wonderful community, and all the, being among these big names, but they made the time to come see us. I think that was very rewarding, and I was very pleased to see that people did not forget. So, Peter, if you are listening, thank you very much. Thank to your family for your hospitality and everything you did for us. And of course to you, Joe, for making the time, doing your research, and having us out here. It was a pleasure. We were nervous, but we made it.
Thank you so much for being here. Martina, I have one last question for you. Very important. I understand you're writing a book on Jaroslav Falter. How is that going? And is there anything that we could do, the people who are fans of your father's, is there anything that we can do to help you? What can we expect, and what is it we can do to maybe help facilitate that?
Wow, thank you. Yes, and it's almost embarrassing to talk about it. I have mountains and mountains of documents and paperwork, and anyway, thousands and thousands of words. However, I've been trying for 15 plus years to get it off the ground and have it published. I have talked to people, they're probably listening right now. One gentleman gave me a contact, and when I look at our friendship and our friends on Facebook, we had 15 mutual friends, and 12 out of those 15, 12 I have already talked to about the book. And
okay.
And we go back to 10, 15 years. So what my struggles are, the biggest struggle is I cannot find an editor who would take the time and sit down, do the research, and put the book in order as far as, getting ready to publish. I just haven't found anybody who would take the time, and always something always comes up, either I was pregnant, and then, or I was moving, or the other person had, family issues. It was never a priority, but at this point, I'm really at the end of the rope, and I can't find anybody who would take it up.
Martina, maybe through this video and people seeing it, we'll be able to connect you somehow with an editor and help your dream of writing a book about your dad get to the next level. In the meantime, I want to thank Ludmila, Jaroslav, both of you. Thank you so much for being my guest this morning. Martina, thank you for your translation and for all you did to help make this happen.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And greetings all listeners.
Ciao.
Hi.
Ciao,
See you
ciao.
later.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. That concludes our interview with Jaroslav Falter for tonight's Vintage Motocross Q&A. I hope you did enjoy that. And as I mentioned earlier, we will be back Next week, with the regular format of the show, once again, our condolences to the Falta family, Martina Falta, of course, and to all of Falta's fans around the world. I'm Joe Abadi. Thanks for watching Vintage Motocross Q&A.